Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. If you see your name scrolling over here, you know what that means. Thank you for your love and support. It comes back to you tenfold. If you are new to the channel and you begin to like what you are hearing, please leave a like and a comment below. It lets the algorithm know that you enjoyed the video, and I would truly appreciate it, as it does help the channel. If you'd like to join Back to Ashes, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure your alert is set to all, the way you know every time I upload a video. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's Vocal Melatonin, and it is entitled True Revenge Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad, or maybe in the middle, I don't know. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. Enjoy. Shadows of Deep Cut, a recruit's nightmare. In the spring of 1996, at just 16 years old, I stepped into the British Army with the wide-eyed optimism of youth. Basic training, those grueling 10 weeks at the Pirbright camp, was supposed to be the toughest ordeal I'd face. The days blurred into endless drills, starting before dawn and ending long after dusk, in cramped, dingy quarters with meals that barely qualified as food. Yet, somehow, I thrived. I was young, fit, and carried a cheerful spirit that helped me push through the exhaustion. When the passing out parade finally arrived, I marched proudly into my crisp uniform, catching sight of my mother's beaming face in the crowd. That moment of pride felt like a reward for every aching muscle and sleepless night. After surviving boot camp, recruits moved on to Phase 2, specialized trade training. As an aspiring chef, my destination was St. Omer Barracks in Aldershot. But first came a holding period at Deep Cut Barracks, just a short distance from Pirbright. Everyone, regardless of trade, spent time there awaiting their next course. I arrived full of relief. The food improved noticeably. We had proper duvets instead of scratchy blankets, and the daily routine felt almost relaxed compared to basic training. New arrivals were housed together in a large shared room until assignments to platoons were sorted. My first night there shattered any illusions of calm. Around 1 a.m., needing the bathroom, I approached the door, only to have it burst open. Two figures in gas masks stormed in, wielding pillowcases stuffed with what appeared to be helmets. They charged toward one bed and began mercilessly beating the sleeping recruit. Frozen in shock, I looked toward the doorway and saw the deputy corporal, clearly drunk, propping the door open, laughing hysterically. The attack lasted perhaps half a minute before the assailants fled, the corporal trailing behind, all of them cackling as they disappeared down the corridor. I helped the bruised young man, also around my age, to clean up in the bathrooms. We exchanged no words. What could we say? The man in charge had facilitated the assault. Over the following days, the ugly truth emerged. Deep Cut served as a dumping ground for failed or disgraced NCOs and officers, sergeants, corporals, even lieutenants, sent there as punishments or career limbo. These were the very people entrusted with millions of impressionable teenagers and early 20s recruits. Bored, bitter, and often intoxicated, they turned their frustrations into cruel games played at our expense. I clung to the hope that my stay would be brief, 1 or 2 weeks at most, before moving to chef training. Then came the blow. Called into the sergeant's office, I learned that there was a shortage of Army chefs, meant I'd remain at Deep Cut for up to 3 months, until enough recruits passed basic training to form a proper course. 3 months in, that place felt like a sentence. Assigned to a platoon, I met my new platoon sergeant. He spoke in a soft Sunderland accent and seemed almost approachable at first, outlining cleaning routines and basic expectations. Then, casually, he warned us about his evil twin, a darker version of himself that would make life unbearable if we crossed him. We laughed nervously, assuming it was a joke. Older lads who'd been there longer pulled me aside. "Stay off Sergeant G's radar. Keep your head down." Whispers circulated about a recent suicide, a young soldier allegedly driven to despair after becoming the target of this evil twin. I soon witnessed it myself. One afternoon, a pigeon flew into our room through an open window. After clumsy, laughing efforts to guide it out failed, Sergeant G appeared. He asked what the commotion was about, then declared he'd demonstrate how to catch it properly. What began as comical leaps turned into a relentless half-hour pursuit. The bird, terrified, darted frantically. Finally, he snatched it. In a moment of sheer terror, he bit its head clean off, spat it onto a bed, and tossed the body out the window. "Evil Ed's had his dinner," he chuckled as we stood in stunned silence. That cruelty was only the beginning. Sergeant G's reputation for sadism was well earned. On a scorching summer day, he forced us to push a massive temporary road roller, a heavy sun-baked cylinder of rubber and steel, around a field using only our bare hands. By the end, our palms and fingers had fused into giant, agonizing blisters. Unsatisfied, he inspected the damage, berating us for lacking men's hands, then handed us a coarse rope for a brutal tug of war until the blisters ripped open, exposing raw, screaming flesh. He followed that with press-ups on burning concrete. Worst still were the infected booster injections many of us developed. Sergeant G hunted down those affected and punched the swollen sites as hard as possible. I still bear the scar from when he burst mine open, pus and blood streaming down my arm before ordering more press-ups. He lurched like a predator, hiding under beds or in lockers, springing out to terrorize anyone who spoke out of turn. Days dragged on in monotonous dread, filled with whatever twisted tasks the staff invented. Then came an announced exercise. 3 days and 2 nights in the woods near Sandhurst. Sergeant G warned that his SAS mates might appear to conduct interrogations. I dismissed it as another empty threat. The first day passed pleasantly under sunny skies. That night, during guard duty in our BackToAshes, shallow dugouts covered for shelter, I whispered to wake my relief partner. A gruff, unfamiliar Scottish voice snapped back from the darkness, telling me to leave. Suspicious yet excited at the chance to capture one of these supposed SAS intruders, I cocked my gun, loaded with blanks, and demanded they show themselves. Yanking back the poncho, I found Sergeant G, naked, in the basha with a female recruit. He'd used the fake accent to deceive me. Furious, he ordered silence and sent me back to my post. I was now on his radar. He was married. I'd witnessed his infidelity during duty. Retribution was inevitable. The next night brought torrential rain. A signed third stag with the same girl he'd been with, oddly sparing her basha partner. I chatted quietly to pass the boredom. Suddenly, a heavy weight crashed onto my back from behind. A hand clamped my helmet, yanking it back as cold metal pressed against my throat. A knife, I assumed. "Drop your rifle," the Scottish voice demanded. Dragged into the dark forest, I stumbled for 10 minutes before being forced face down into a deep, filthy puddle. They demanded my details, platoon strength, chain of command, everything. Terrified and alone, I complied. My answers earned kicks to the ribs, blows to the body, and whipping strikes across my thighs. Questions turned absurd, praising Sergeant G, naming the biggest slag in the platoon. Each met with violence. After 20 agonizing minutes, they tired of it, led me back, and abandoned me near camp. Retrieving my rifle from the shaken girl, I lied that nothing serious had happened, just questions. Inside, I was shattered, longing for home, feeling utterly violated despite my youth. The exercise ended the next morning. In debrief, Sergeant G stared directly at me while announcing his SAS mates had interrogated several recruits. The march back felt endless. I dreaded returning to camp, where he'd have freer rein to target me. Relief came unexpectedly. An officer summoned me. Enough chefs had passed basic. I was leaving for St. Omar at week's end. I avoided Sergeant G by volunteering for unrelated duties under different supervision. That chapter at Deep Cut ended, but the scars remained. Years later, when I tried sharing my experiences with a tribunal, they showed little interest. The nightmares persist, dreams of re-enlisting, only to face his revenge. And Sergeant G? Far from facing consequences for tormenting vulnerable young soldiers. The Army promoted him. He's now in charge of recruit welfare. That part, tragically, is no exaggeration. In sickness and in health. 37 years ago, I stood before God, family, and friends, and vowed to love and honor Luther through every trial life could throw at us. In sickness and in health, I repeated with quiet conviction, believing those words carried the weight of eternity. I kept them faithfully through lean years, sleepless nights with crying babies, and every quiet sacrifice a woman makes when she decides her husband's dreams matter more than her own. I was the model wife, or so everyone said. 3 children arrived exactly as planned. Dinner waited on the table at 6 sharp. The house gleamed. The laundry folded itself in perfect stacks. When Luther lost his job during my 3rd pregnancy, I didn't complain. I dragged my swollen body to temp jobs, juggling 2 toddlers and nausea, while scrubbing floors and cooking from scratch every evening. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself real women endured. I told myself Luther would see how unbreakable our partnership was. He found steady work again, eventually. We exhaled. I returned to my domain, the home, and resumed the quiet rhythm that made our life look flawless from the outside. The children grew, left, built lives of their own. We became empty nesters, comfortable, predictable. I thought we had earned our peaceful chapter. Then the mammogram came back wrong. The oncologist's words landed like stones in still water. Early stage breast cancer, highly treatable. Chemo first, surgery maybe later. I looked at Luther, waiting for the hand squeeze, the whispered, "We'll get through this." Instead, his face closed. Not fear exactly, something colder. Reservation. Distance already creeping in. He came to the first chemo session. He held my hand, brought water, asked the right questions. I told myself he was processing. I told myself he needed time. I decided not to burden the children yet. They were scattered across states, busy with young families. Better to wait until I had good news to share with the bad. But the second appointment came, and Luther had meetings. The third, he was under the weather. By the fourth, he barely looked at me when I retched into the basin at home. His eyes slid away, embarrassed, repulsed. I started reading. Forums full of women with the same story. Husbands vanishing after the diagnosis. Statistics cold and clear. Women far more likely to be abandoned when cancer strikes them than when it strikes their husbands. I tried to push the thought away. Not Luther. Not after everything. Then came the note. A single sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. I can't do this anymore. I didn't sign up for this. No signature, no apology, just gone. He left me with the house still echoing his absence, the refrigerator full of food I could no longer keep down, and a bank account that suddenly felt like a trap. I discovered, too late, that almost everything we owned was in his name alone. The down payment on our home had come from my inheritance, funneled quietly into his accounts over the years. I had never questioned it. Why would I? We were married. He stopped answering calls. Soon his Facebook filled with photos of a younger woman, smiling, carefree, clinging to his arm. Our old friends, his friends originally, went silent. No one returned my messages. The circle closed, and I was left outside. The divorce papers arrived with surgical precision. He wanted everything. My lawyer urged me to fight dirty, dig up dirt, use evidence. I hesitated. I still wanted to be the bigger person, the gracious one, the saint everyone had always called me. Then I found the receipts. Hotel charges, jewelry receipts, plane tickets to places we've never visited together. All dated after his career took off again. All hidden in a drawer he thought I'd never open. Something inside me shifted. Not rage. Exactly. Something quieter, colder, more deliberate. I gave the lawyer everything, but I didn't want a screaming courtroom battle. I wanted something cleaner, more devastating. In mediation after mediation, I appeared frail, bandana on my head, mask over my mouth, eyes hollow from chemo, voice soft. When asked what I wanted, I murmured, I just want fairness. I don't hold grudges. I wish him well. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge's gaze hardened on Luther. I let the contrast speak for itself. In the end, the house became mine outright. A fair share of savings, retirement, assets. Luther kept his salary and his pride, until I began quietly unraveling that too. I visited his office once, papers in hand that could have waited. I looked every bit the dying wife. Thin, pale, head wrapped, steps slow, heads turned. Whispers followed. His assistant asked how I was. I answered honestly. Chemo was brutal. The divorce harder. But I was managing. Her face told me everything. Luther never breathed a word. Word spread. Later, I took a box of his forgotten belongings to his brother, Ronald, and sister-in-law, Wendy. When Ronald opened the door and saw me, his eyes widened. Rose? Are you sick? I let confusion flicker across my face. Yes, breast cancer. Didn't Luther tell you? He left because he couldn't handle it. Wendy's outrage was immediate. Ronald's too. I asked them, pleaded really, not to tell the children yet. I wanted to be stronger first. Wendy couldn't stay silent long. She came with me to appointments, cooked meals, held me when I cried with relief that the tumors were shrinking. She told me Luther had lied to them about the divorce. We drifted apart, as he said. She told me about the much younger girlfriend. She told her friends, and her friends told others. The story grew legs, quietly, inevitably. One afternoon, after what should have been my final chemo round for a while, the sliding kitchen door opened. Luther stepped inside uninvited. His face was twisted. Fury, humiliation, something darker. How could you ruin my life? He hissed. My reputation. I stared at him, too tired to pretend anymore. He ranted. The girlfriend had left him. People at work looked at him differently. Everyone knew. I let a small, exhausted smile touch my lips. That was a mistake. His hands shot toward my throat. Sudden, instinctive, ugly. I froze, certain this was how it ended. Then the door flew open again. Wendy. Behind her, all three of my children, their spouses, my grandchildren. Wendy had called them. Wendy had told them everything. Anthony and Walter moved like lightning. They seized their father, dragged him outside, threw him off the property. The women and children rushed to me. I stumbled to the bathroom, retching. Not from chemo this time. Luther disappeared from our lives after that, completely. The children were hurt. I had hidden so much for so long, but they forgave me. When remission came, my daughter insisted I move closer to her family. I did. These last few years have been the happiest of my life. I no longer preach about perfect marriages or enduring at all costs. Marriage is not a sacrament for everyone. Sometimes the most sacred promise you can make is to yourself, to survive, to see clearly, to choose people who choose you back, even when you're broken. Telling Ronald and Wendy the truth was the turning point. Wendy's inability to stay quiet may have saved my life twice, once from Luther's hands and once from dying alone. I am grateful every day, and I am finally truly free. They'll probably call me a fool, or worse, for never running to the police, for not screaming for help the moment the mask slipped. But reputations are fragile things, and mine had already been shattered into pieces, so small that no one would have believed my version over his. He was the quiet, dependable one. I was the chaotic mess he'd fixed. So when the trap closed around me, the only path left was forward, through the darkness he created, straight into his own undoing. It began innocently enough, the way most poisons do. I met Chad about a year before the world locked its doors. He was patient, clever with problems, the steady anchor my scattered life desperately needed. We laughed easily, planned quietly, built something that felt solid. Then the pandemic descended like a curtain. And in the panic, we decided to merge our lives completely. Same apartment, same bubble, same walls closing in day after day. My lease ended at the perfect moment. The landlord waived the fees without argument. Moving companies still rode through empty streets. Both our jobs went remote. It felt fated. Chad, the tech-savvy one, set up our shared office in the spare room. I never questioned it. Why would I? He handled the cables, the monitors, the rules. When one of us had a call, the other retreated to the couch or the kitchen, harmless. My workday hours ended before his. His company squeezed harder, demanded longer hours without extra pay. I worried. I read articles about work from home burnout, about the mental bleed between desk and home. With the money we saved on rent and going out, I surprised him. A powerful new gaming PC. Top specs according to the nervous salesman who helped me pick it. The deal was simple. Work stayed on the office computer. After hours, fun belonged in the bedroom on the new machine. Boundaries. I never imagined I'd become the girlfriend who nagged about screen time, but it worked. He started leaving the desk. We ate dinner together. He watched me follow workout videos, chuckled at my clumsy attempts. Our nights grew warmer, closer. For a while, I convinced myself the isolation had saved us. But something else was growing in the shadows. I didn't see it at first. Small signs slipped past. A strange message from a friend, Paula, asking if work was still okay. Her tone oddly careful. I brushed it off. Everyone was stressed. Another time, passing the bedroom during one of his late-night gaming sessions, I caught a fragment of Discord chatter. Man, she's the hottest. Can't believe you actually. I smiled to myself and kept walking. Compliments from guy friends were background noise. I'd heard them my whole life. Then the silence started. Paula stopped replying completely. Not blocked, just gone. I reached out to Julie instead. Her response hit like cold water. I'm sorry, but I can't stay friends with someone who's doing that. If money was tight, you could have told me. I thought we were closer. Confusion, then dread. What that? She hesitated before typing the word, OnlyFans. I laughed. Genuine, disbelieving laughter until she sent the links. Some images were laughably bad fakes, clumsy Photoshop jobs. Others were surveillance stills. Me stretching in the living room. Me cooking, camera angled low and lingering. Our own security cameras, the ones we'd installed for safety, now public property. And worse, posed shots in lingerie I'd never owned, bikinis I'd never worn, my face seamlessly grafted onto bodies that weren't mine, but close enough to fool anyone who didn't look too hard. I confronted him in a blind rage, screaming, shoving. He caught my wrists, calm, too calm, and asked why I was acting like this. The audacity burned hotter than the humiliation. He laughed when I demanded he take it all down. Then the laughter stopped. You're not leaving, he said, fingers tightening on my jaw. You'll never leave. You're mine. No shouting, no threats of bruises, just that quiet certainty, like he'd already won. When I pushed back, he laid it out plain. More content existed, much more. If I walked, he'd flood every corner of the internet. Worse edits, deeper invasions, new fabrications, so vile I'd never recover. My parents, my job, everyone. Then came the confusion, delivered almost casually. A pay cut at work. Me quietly out-earning him. The resentment had festered until he decided to fix the imbalance. My image, my body, my privacy, repurposed into his side income. He showed me the dashboard. The numbers were obscene. He was making more from strangers' subscriptions than his salary had ever paid. Numb, I asked the only question my brain could form. Is it good money? He smiled, proud, almost tender, and said yes. That night he cooked burgers. We ate in silence while he talked excitedly about real photos and premium tiers. I nodded mechanically, thoughts racing. If I ran, he'd destroy me. If I stayed silent, he'd keep owning me. But jealousy might be a weapon he hadn't anticipated. I started small. Told him if we were doing this, I wanted in. Passwords, control. It'll feel more authentic, I said. Men can tell when it's forced. He bought it, eagerly. I learned the systems, watched, waited, played the part, agreeable, creative, even enthusiastic. Months passed. The world cracked open again. His job demanded more. His pay crept back up, but never to what it was. He talked about quitting, living off our earnings. I talked him out of it. Better keep the safety net. Then one afternoon, while he was at a rare in-person meeting, I struck. New passwords, two-factor everything, sessions logged out on all his devices, traces scrubbed where I could find them. When he noticed, I smiled sweetly. It's my image now. I know what sells better than you ever could. Don't worry, you can still give ideas. He threatened to send everything to my family. I reminded him revenge porn laws existed and that his old Discord buddies, some of them paying customers, might not appreciate their friend looking weak and controlling. He backed down. I escalated slowly. A public Instagram, tasteful thirst traps, gym selfies, tight leggings, strategic angles. I posted workout stories featuring bigger, buffer guys, men who made Chad's skinny frame feel small. I gushed at home about their arms, their cars, their confidence. Stupid, shallow bait. And it worked. He seethed quietly at first, then louder. The final snap came one evening. My bags packed, waiting by the door. I can't be with someone who flirts like that in public, he said, who exposes herself willingly. The hypocrisy was almost funny. Almost. I let him believe he'd won the breakup. Took my things, crashed with Julie, told her everything. She cried with me, then helped me find a new place. The money from those final months paid for it. Furniture, security deposit, breathing room. I dismantled what I could. Deleted, reported, prayed. Some things are gone forever. The internet remembers even when we beg it to forget. But Chad lost access, lost control, lost the quiet power he'd built over me. I beat him, not with screams or fights, but with patience and the very jealousy he'd ignored in himself. I'm free now. But the funny part, he still doesn't understand how he handed me the keys. After a single exhausting year of college, I realized the structured world of lectures, deadlines, and forced enthusiasm wasn't for me. The other students seemed almost hungry for knowledge, scribbling notes with bright eyes, while I sat there feeling like an intruder in someone else's dream. I dropped out without much ceremony. My parents were furious, disappointed in ways that cut deeper than anger. They refused to let me return home, so I packed up my dorm room and prepared for whatever came next. That's when my older brother, Luke, stepped in. He and his wife, Miriam, had converted their basement into a short-term rental for a while, but Luke had grown weary of the constant turnover and cleaning. He offered it to me at a fraction of the usual rate, saying I could pay once I found steady work. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. What I didn't fully grasp then was that Miriam's agreement came with invisible strings, ones pulled taut by resentment. To understand the tension, you need to know me. I'm heavy, not just a little overweight, noticeably, unapologetically large. I've tried every diet trend, every restriction, but food has always been my comfort, my joy, my rebellion. My family leans toward bigger bodies. It's in our genes. But it's also in our love for hearty meals and shared tables. I move, too. I follow energetic dance videos at home, sweating through routines that make me feel alive, even if the scale doesn't budge much. Miriam, by contrast, was carved from a different era's ideal. Sharp cheekbones, delicate frame, the kind of thin that looks deliberate and punishing. She ate like survival was the only goal. Plain turkey, steamed greens, nothing that might bring pleasure or color to her plate. I pitied any future children she might have. She'd be the archetype of the controlling almond mom, measuring out almonds while lecturing on discipline. Their differences wouldn't have mattered in passing. People of all sizes coexist, but Miriam had despised me since the day we met. It was never overt at first, just subtle cuts. At their wedding, she orchestrated family photos and positioned me in the far corner, then cropped me out entirely before posting them online. Frame prints around their home conveniently excluded me. On holidays, her lip would curl faintly whenever I reached for seconds, as if my plate was a personal affront. I told myself it was nothing. She barely had to interact with me before. But moving into their basement changed everything. Proximity bred contempt, and I began to sense that her disdain wasn't only about my size. It was about the warmth that surrounded me. My family is loud, affectionate, and perfectly shaped but fiercely loving. My parents, average in build, adore each other openly. Dad calls Mom beautiful daily, brings her small gifts without occasion. Luke had always been my shield, my confidant, the brother who protected me from the world. Miriam seemed to hate that bond most of all. The way people gravitated toward me, laughed at my jokes, valued my kindness. I was liked, genuinely, and that appeared to just gnaw at her. The first real warning came the day I moved in. After hauling the last box downstairs, Luke ran upstairs for something. Miriam lingered. I thanked her, and I handled the rest. But she stayed rooted, arms folded. When I asked if she needed anything, her voice was flat. "How long do you plan on staying?" I explained my job search. Pizza places, cafes, restaurants. Grinning because food felt like a natural path. She didn't smile back. "We can't have you here forever," she said. The word's edge was something colder than impatience. Luke returned before she could continue, and she fell silent. I resolved to move quickly, find work, save, repair things with my parents, leave. But dinners became battlegrounds. Miriam picked at her sparse plate while I ate with real appetite. Luke's cooking was too good, echoing our grandmother's lessons. One night, after I served myself seconds, she couldn't hold it in. "How can you eat so much?" The disgust leaked through her careful tone. Luke frowned. He'd never heard her speak like that. I tried to diffuse it with humor. "I'm fat. I eat a lot." We both laughed. She didn't. She lectured about obesity, discipline, how women especially must control themselves or face judgment. I couldn't resist. "It's okay. The people who matter love me exactly as I am. Everyone else, doesn't really count. Luke backed me up, steering the talk to old memories. Miriam went quiet, but the air felt heavier. Small sabotages followed. My car keys vanished one morning. Miriam denied seeing them. When I asked to borrow her car for an interview, she refused outright. Walk. You need the exercise. I missed the bus connection and barely made it. Later, Luke found the keys in the backyard flower bed, somewhere I never went. Pollen makes me sneeze. He told me to drop it. I tried. Job rejections piled up. One manager finally admitted. Someone had called warning that I stole food from workplaces. I begged, explained it was a lie. He relented, perhaps desperate for staff, and hired me. The only person who knew my applications was Miriam, through casual dinner talk with Luke. Paranoia whispered her name, but I had no proof. I threw myself into work, took every shift, ate alone, avoided the main house. For 2 weeks, it felt like peace. Then came laundry day. The basement lacked a washer, so I used their upstairs, moving quietly. Miriam stormed in, face twisted. She screamed that I had to leave immediately, that she couldn't stand my presence, that if it were up to her, Luke would never see my fat ass again. I stayed calm, said I'd go after my first paycheck. My parents would help now. It wasn't enough. She lunged, grabbing my hair, yanking viciously. I pushed back, harder than intended. She slammed into the wall, screaming assault. She dialed 911. Luke arrived mid-chaos. I explained frantically. Police came. My parents, too. Dad talked them down. No arrests, just family business. Miriam demanded a restraining order. They ignored her. I packed and left with my parents, sobbing in the car. Days later, clarity hit. This was her end game. Force me out. Sever me from Luke. I wouldn't let her win. I called Luke. We talked honestly. He sounded exhausted, relieved I didn't want to lose him. Then I began my quiet counterstrike. I became unavoidable. Dinner at their house, every night. Loud, cheerful, eating heartily, praising Luke's food. Weekends, outings, always inviting Miriam. She withered visibly, not gracefully, but like something poisoned slowly from within. I thrived at work, saved money, stayed at my parents' longer as leverage. The breaking point came at Dad's 55th birthday barbecue. I was everywhere. Photos, speeches, laughter, always pulling Luke in. Miriam simmered. In the kitchen later, she cornered me. Eyes venomous, voice low. She knew my game, knew I'd gotten away with assaulting her before. She was done sharing Luke's attention. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Luke pays attention because I'm his sister, his best friend since forever. He could leave you tomorrow, but I'll always be here. She snapped, hair yanked again, screams about my ugliness, my uselessness, her vow to erase me from his life. Then Luke's arms were around her, pulling her off. My parents stood furious in the doorway. Guests crowded behind them. Luke whispered something lethal. She left, defeated. The truth spilled to the family. False accusations, the hatred, the sabotage. Luke filed for divorce soon after. He stayed with us during the proceedings, apologized endlessly. A year later, it's settled. Luke and I have separate apartments. He's dating someone kind, warm, no rush toward marriage again. I learned later, Miriam battled hidden addictions. It explained some darkness and didn't excuse it. I felt a flicker of pity, then relief. She's gone from our lives. And in the end, the family stayed whole, louder, closer, unbroken. A few months back, a close friend of mine, a Navy sailor, received permanent change of station orders to Virginia. She had been trying for weeks to find a reliable tenant for her house, but kept hitting dead ends with no solid leads. Still optimistic, she turned to me with an offer. I could live there rent-free as long as I took responsibility for finding a renter eventually, and handled basic upkeep and maintenance. On top of that, she couldn't bring one of her cats along due to space constraints in her new place, so the cat would stay behind too. I was thrilled at first. I'd been stuck in the barracks for a while, sharing a tiny room with another guy. It's cramped, noisy, and offers zero privacy. The idea of having an entire house to myself, for free, no less, sounded like a dream upgrade. I jumped at the chance without much hesitation. When I finally arrived and stepped inside, though the excitement evaporated fast. The house was spacious, sure, but it was in rough shape, far worse than I'd imagined. Piles of random junk cluttered every room. Thick layers of dust coated the surfaces. Fleas hopped across the floor, and the whole place reeked of cat litter and neglect. This caught me completely off guard. My friend had always struck me as a tidy and put together. Clearly, I'd misjudged that part of her. Even so, I tried to stay positive. I figured a solid cleaning day and a few buddies could turn things around and make the place livable. I helped her finish packing up the last of her things. We hung out for a while, just chatting. That's when she opened up about her recent breakup. Her ex was Army, stationed in a different unit from mine. At first, he'd been charming and attentive, and over time, he'd grown erratic and unstable. When she finally ended things and gave him 2 weeks to move out, he flipped. He started pulling petty childish stunts, hiding her boots, harassing the cats, trashing rooms, even blocking her car in the driveway and throwing tantrums when she needed to leave. Eventually, he did move out, and she thought that chapter was closed. After she shipped out, I mostly avoided the house, except for quick daily stops to scoop the litter box and feed the cat. One evening, after grabbing dinner with a friend who had agreed to help with the big cleanup, she offered to come along. I thought it was a great idea. Let her scope out the mess ahead of time so we would plan supplies and attack it efficiently. As we pulled up, I noticed a strange rustling in the trees around the property. At the time, I brushed it off as some animal scurrying around, though looking back, It adds an eerie layer to the memory. Walking to the door, an uneasy feeling settled over me, like something wasn't right, like I shouldn't go in. But I didn't want to bail and waste my friend's time, so I pushed the instinct aside. The front door lock was usually stubborn. It often took several twists and tugs before it would catch properly. This time, though, it turned smoothly on the first try and opened right up. I chalked it up to luck, or maybe I'd absent-mindedly left it unlocked last time. But small doubt lingered. Inside, I reached for the entryway light switch. One bulb flickered on. The other stayed dark. I assumed it had burned out, but as I stepped closer to check, my foot splashed into a shallow puddle of water on the floor. The fixture above was completely filled with water, and droplets were still falling. A low rumbling sound echoed from overhead. Probably the AC unit upstairs, I thought. Maybe leaking or malfunctioning. More problems to add to the list. I told my friend to wander around and assess the cleaning needs while I headed upstairs to feed the cat. But before I got far, she called me back urgently. She was in the kitchen, staring at the back door. The glass panel was shattered, shards scattered across the tile. She asked if it had been like that before. I was positive it hadn't. I'd only popped in briefly a couple times since the owner left, and broken glass would have stood out immediately. The pattern of shards suggested the break came from outside. Strangely, though, the door itself was still locked. Unsure if anyone was still inside, I told her to stay put while I cleared the upstairs. No weapons on me, but my friend had a curious collection of decorative swords downstairs, so I grabbed one for good measure, hoping my old stick fighting skills from childhood might come in handy if needed. Thankfully, the house was empty. We stepped outside, called the police, and I phoned the owner to let her in. When the cops arrived, we pieced it together. Clear break-in via the smashed window, but nothing appeared stolen. The place wasn't any more trash than before. The front door was unlocked now, and that mysterious water puddle seemed unrelated at first. We all suspected her ex. He knew she'd deployed and probably assumed the house was vacant. Maybe he was hunting for something specific, or maybe he just wanted to cause chaos and petty damage. Either way, the vandalism felt personal. After the police left, I was rattled. I'd never dealt with a break-in before, and the thought that her unstable ex might return made me hesitant to spend more time there. But the cat still needed care. The barracks banned pets, and none of my friends could take it in temporarily. So, despite the creeps, I had to keep going back. I put it off a couple of days, steeling myself. When I finally returned, the smell hit hard. Heavy mildew and mold overpowering even the lingering cat odor. The entryway hardwood had started warping, and the ceiling sagged noticeably. The leak had worsened dramatically. This wasn't some minor AC drip. Sword in hand again. Better safe than sorry. I headed upstairs. The rumbling was louder now, more distinct. Running water, like a faucet left on full blast. Passing the storage closet in the hallway, my foot squelched on soaked carpet. Directly above the entryway were the AC and water heater set. In the master bedroom, no visible water, but the sound was unmistakable. A door I hadn't noticed before led to a small half bath. Another door beyond that was locked, and the carpet in front was drenched. The layout made it clear. The tub in there sat right over the entryway. I almost kicked the door in. The damage was already extensive, but I paused. Who knew what else might be waiting? Instead, I called the police again. An officer came out, removed the knob carefully, and we found the tub overflowing, water still running. We shut it off and he updated the ongoing report. Putting the pieces together, it all clicked. The vandal, almost certainly the ex, had broken in through the back that night, just before my friend and I arrived. He smashed the window to enter, probably left through the front, explaining the unlocked door. While inside, he went upstairs, plugged the tub drain, turned on the faucet full, and locked the bathroom door behind it. Either that same night or on a quick return trip. It wasn't about theft. It was pure spite. He wanted to flood the house, knowing water damage is a nightmare to remediate and that she'd be gone for months. Vindictive doesn't even cover it. The cat eventually slipped out through the broken glass window and ran off. I handed the keys over to the insurance adjusters and swore off the place for good. Last I heard, she eventually found new tenants. The repairs got done, and things have settled down with no more incidents. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true revenge stories. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you all so much for your dedication and support. As I've always said, without you, I wouldn't have a voice and I would be sitting here talking to myself. So thank you for keeping the flame lit. There's no other way to say that, so thank you. If you're asleep, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these collections. In the meantime, please stay vigilant and please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.